Snow had a way of telling the truth in that small town. It covered old footprints but somehow made every memory sharper under the streetlights. Downtown, garlands wrapped around lampposts, Christmas wreaths hung on brick walls, and the smell of cinnamon rolls floated from the corner bakery. Kids ran with red cheeks and wool hats, leaving giggles in the frozen air. The Christmas tree in the town square waited to be lit, strings of lights still dark, like a promise not yet fulfilled. On nights like this, people said, you can almost hear heaven breathing if you listen close enough. But that year, heaven was about to stir a story the whole town thought was over. Years ago, he walked away under this same winter sky, proud and sure he'd never look back. His name was Henry Carter, the boy who once had everything money could buy and nothing he couldn't walk away from. He left behind a girl whose heart he shattered in front of half the town, words sharper than any December wind. That girl's name was Melanie Brooks, and everyone expected her to break and stay broken. In small towns, people remember. They whisper. They say things like, "Bless her heart, she deserved better." But what they did not expect was what God would quietly build in the years Henry was gone. Because while he was chasing success far from home, heaven was working on the girl he left behind. Melanie learned to wake up before sunrise and knead hope into dough at the little bakery on the corner. She learned that hot chocolate with extra marshmallows could soften the hardest days for the kids who had very little. She organized Christmas coat drives, food baskets, and a no kid left without a gift tradition the whole town rallied around. People stopped seeing her as the girl Henry humiliated and started calling her the heart of Main Street. And when someone said, "How did you do it after everything?" she would smile and whisper, "I didn't. God did." Her scars did not disappear, but they healed into stories she told in the quiet corners where faith meets tired souls. She had no idea that the one who broke her would one day walk back into the world God rebuilt around her. That December, the cold came earlier than usual, sharp and clean, like a page waiting to be written on. The town was buzzing about the tree lighting ceremony, the nativity rehearsal, and the big Christmas charity drive. Windows glowed with warm light. Gingerbread houses lined kitchen counters and carols played on every radio channel. People said, "This year feels different, like God's about to do something big." No one could explain why, but some stories carry a weight you can feel before you see it. A quiet expectation hung over the snow-covered streets, like the pause between a question and an answer. And somewhere far from home, a man who once walked away felt something in his chest say, "Go back." Henry hadn't planned on returning. Not really. He told himself it was just a trip, just business, just a few days to clear things up and disappear again. His pride had taken blow after blow, deals lost, friends gone, doors slammed that he thought would always stay open. He tried to outrun his past, but guilt travels lighter than luggage and it never needed a plane ticket. On a sleepless night, scrolling through old photos, he saw one snapshot of Main Street at Christmas. Lights. Snow. A blurry shape that might have been her in the background. And something broke in him, the kind of breaking that sounds a lot like a prayer you don't know how to say out loud. So he packed a bag and drove back to the town he swore he'd never call home again. No fanfare, no announcement, no one waiting at the station with open arms. Just a man with tired eyes and a heart running out of places to hide. He rehearsed excuses in his head. I was young, I was stupid, I didn't know what I wanted. But every sentence tasted shallow compared to the depth of the hurt he caused. He wondered if she still worked at that bakery, if she still laughed the same way, if she still hated Christmas because of him. He had no idea that God had taken every broken piece and turned them into something he would barely recognize. By the time Henry crossed the town line, the welcome sign was dusted with snow, and Christmas lights framed the letters. He noticed new shops, fresh paint, and a community center he did not remember. On the bulletin board outside the cafe, a flyer caught his eye. Christmas Drive, No Child Forgotten. Coordinator, Melanie Brooks. Her name hit him harder than any winter wind ever could. He stood there, fingers numb, breath fogging in the cold, realizing he was walking into a story that had moved on without him. Somewhere between shame and longing, one thought burned in his mind. What if she's better off without me? And for the first time, he was afraid the answer might be yes. But here's the miracle about Christmas. God is not intimidated by the messes we made in other seasons. He steps into winters we created with our own choices and still dares to write spring. He takes the people we broke and grows gardens from their tears, until their lives no longer orbit our absence but His presence. And then sometimes, when pride has finally collapsed and we are ready to see, He lets us come back. Not to take credit, not to pick up where we left off, but to witness what His grace has done without us. That's the road Henry is walking tonight, under snowflakes and regret, heading straight into a town that hasn't forgotten, and into the life of a woman who learned to stand again holding God's hand, not his. This is a story about humiliation, silence, and the long work of redemption no one saw happening. It's about a girl everyone pitied becoming the woman God quietly raised in the shadows. It's about a man who thought he was the main character, only to discover he was just a chapter in what God was truly writing. He came back when she least expected, and saw what God did without him. If you've ever been left, humiliated, or told your story was over, this is for you. Stay with me until the end of this video, and let this Christmas story remind you that God is still writing in the dark. Subscribe to Redeemed Hearts for more stories of love, faith, and second chances that only God can write. Snowflakes drifted over Main Street like tiny pieces of quiet truth, settling on rooftops, sidewalks, and the old wooden benches outside the bakery. The town felt both familiar and foreign to Henry as he stepped out of his car, breath turning to mist in the cold. Holiday lights stretched across the street, glowing gold against the deep blue December sky. Children ran past him in wool hats and puffy coats, shouting, "Come on, the tree lighting's tonight." He remembered running like that once, before life became complicated and pride built walls he couldn't see over. When he looked toward the bakery window, memory hit harder than the cold. Melanie used to stand there, and for the first time in years, his chest tightened with something that felt like grief. He took a hesitant step closer, boots crunching on the fresh snow, a sound that echoed like footsteps into his past. The bakery door opened, releasing a warm wave of cinnamon, vanilla, and fresh bread into the crisp air. Two elderly women stepped out, their scarves wrapped snugly, whispering, "Well, bless my heart, is that Henry Carter?" He felt their eyes linger on him with the weight only a small town can deliver. He nodded politely, but they didn't smile, only exchanged a knowing look. In this town, wounds aged slowly, like old wood soaking water, and he knew exactly which wound they remembered. Henry shoved his hands deeper into his pockets, trying to hide the tremor. He had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, but somehow forgot every line now that it was real. A mother walked by pulling a sled, greeting a neighbor with, "Y'all ready for Christmas Eve service tonight?" The words hit him like a soft ache. Faith had once been a language he understood but no longer spoke. He had abandoned more than the town when he left. He abandoned the version of himself he didn't know how to fix. And somewhere behind the warm glow of the bakery, Melanie lived the life he once shattered. He wondered whether she even thought of him anymore, or if God had erased him from her story completely. A gust of wind sent snow swirling around him, tugging his coat and pushing him toward memory. The last time he stood on this street, people were whispering the same way, but for very different reasons. He saw it clearly. An argument he started, words thrown in pride, humiliation burned into the winter air. Melanie's face, stunned and red from tears she didn't want anyone to see. His own voice, too loud, too sharp, echoing down the sidewalk like breaking glass. He'd walked away that night thinking he won. Now the memory made him feel physically sick. Henry crossed the street toward the community board, pretending to read the flyers so he wouldn't have to meet anyone's eyes. But one flyer stood out brighter than the Christmas lights hung above it. Christmas Drive, No Child Forgotten. Coordinator, Melanie Brooks. Her name glowed like a flame against the paper, warming and wounding him at the same time. He reached out, gloved fingers brushing the flyer as if touching it connected him to her somehow. The town trusted her now, celebrated her, and he realized he was the only one still frozen in the past. He stepped back, swallowing the sting of tears he didn't expect. How did someone he hurt so deeply build something so beautiful after him? Did she ever hesitate? Did she ever doubt? Or did God carry her through every winter he left behind? He felt small. Smaller than he'd ever felt in boardrooms or negotiations or the hollow victories of his old life. A man walked by, clapping him on the shoulder with forced politeness. "Didn't think we'd see you round here again, son." The words weren't cruel, just honest in that unmistakable small-town way. Henry forced a thin smile, nodding before the man continued walking. He could feel the town watching him, silently measuring whether he came back to fix or to break again. The weight of that silent judgment pressed on him harder than the cold wind. He rubbed his jaw, suddenly feeling every mistake like a bruise under his skin. He whispered to himself, "Just breathe, one step at a time." But even breathing felt like a confession he didn't know how to make. He turned the corner toward the square, where volunteers were hanging garlands along the gazebo. Laughter floated in the air. Light, warm, familiar. He didn't recognize every face, but the spirit of the town was the same as when he left. Cozy, close-knit, full of soul. Children arranged gingerbread houses on the long tables, their gloves sticky with icing. Someone shouted, "Don't forget the marshmallows for the cocoa booth." Everything looked like the postcard version of Christmas he used to take for granted, and he realized the town had continued its story without missing him at all. A young couple walked by holding hands, swinging a bag of ornaments between them. They were laughing about something small, something only people with uncomplicated hearts found funny. It made Henry feel older than he really was, worn in ways success had never repaired. He glanced at the clock tower, hearing its chimes echo across the snow-covered rooftops. 4 o'clock. He used to meet Melanie here after her afternoon shift. He wondered if she still watched the clock the way she used to, hoping for someone who actually showed up. Henry found himself walking toward the bakery again as if pulled by instinct rather than choice. He didn't dare go inside, not yet, but he stood close enough to see through the frosted window. Inside, warmth glowed like a small universe untouched by winter. Shelves were lined with candy canes, gingerbread men, and steaming pies cooling on wire racks. And there near the counter a silhouette moved, hair pulled back, red sweater dusted with flour. His breath caught. Melanie. She was laughing with an older customer, handing him a warm loaf wrapped in festive paper. Her smile was softer now, deeper, like someone who'd healed in places life once cracked open. Her hair fell over her shoulder in loose waves, catching the golden bakery light. She didn't look broken. She didn't look like a woman who'd been waiting for an apology. She looked whole, and that truth both humbled and shattered him. He stepped back quickly when she turned toward the window, heart pounding like he was 20 again, and scared of everything important. He wasn't ready for her eyes, wasn't ready to see what lived in them now. Anger, forgiveness, indifference he didn't know. He pressed a hand to his forehead, feeling foolish for hiding outside like a ghost afraid of sunlight. But he couldn't just walk in and say, "Hey, remember me? I'm the one who wrecked your heart." Life didn't give rewrites that easily. Not even at Christmas. A bell rang inside as another customer left, carrying a box tied with ribbon. The door swung wide for a moment, letting warmth spill onto the snowy sidewalk. Henry closed his eyes, savoring that rush of cinnamon and vanilla, scents that once marked entire chapters of his life. He remembered late nights baking with Melanie just for fun, stealing kisses between trays of cookies. He remembered the way she dreamed out loud in that very kitchen window. He remembered the way he crushed those dreams with a single, reckless night. And regret surged in him like a second winter. He forced himself to walk away before she saw him. Cowardice or wisdom, he couldn't tell which. But his heart was pounding so loudly he thought the whole street could hear it. He walked past the square again, past volunteers who barely glanced at him, too busy preparing for the festival. A young girl dropped her bag of ornaments and he bent down to help her pick them up. She smiled shyly and said, "Thank you, mister." Her innocence made his chest ache with a strange, painful hope. He straightened and watched her run back to her mother, who waved with a polite but distant nod. People were kind here, but not forgetful. The town's memory was stitched tight, like a quilt that held every story, even the painful ones. Henry shoved his hands deeper into his coat pockets, realizing there were no shortcuts to redemption. Not here, where people said things like, "You gotta earn your way back, honey." He had come expecting resistance, but hadn't expected it to feel this heavy. Still, something kept him from turning around and leaving again. He crossed the bridge overlooking the frozen creek, snowflakes catching in his hair as he stared at the still water below. The world felt suspended, quiet, white, waiting. He whispered, "God, if you're still there, I don't know what to do next." His voice cracked, unfamiliar with prayer. No thunder answered, no miracle unfolded, just the simple peace of cold air on raw emotion. But sometimes that was enough to keep a man standing, enough to keep him walking. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the snowy street. Christmas lights flickered on one by one, illuminating the town like a warm heartbeat. Henry stood at the edge of the square, watching families gather around the tree, their joy effortless and bright. He felt like an outsider, peering into a life he once assumed would always include him. But even as he watched, something softened inside him. Not hope exactly, but the space where hope could grow. He realized he didn't come back for closure. He came back because God had broken something open in him. He turned toward the inn where he'd rented a small room, snow crunching under every step like a reminder he couldn't outrun the past forever. Tomorrow, he would have to face Melanie. Not behind frosted glass, not from a distance, but face to face, with all the weight of who he used to be. He wasn't ready, not yet. But Christmas stories rarely wait for perfect timing. He breathed in the cold night air, letting it sting him awake. "Lord, just don't let me make things worse," he whispered. And under the soft glow of Christmas lights, Henry Carter walked into the longest night of his life. One step closer to the woman God rebuilt without him. The bell above the bakery door chimed softly as Melanie unlocked it just before sunrise, the cold morning air rushing in behind her. Inside, the quiet felt almost sacred, warm lights glowing against the frost gathering on the windows. She hung her red wool coat on the peg, brushed flour off the counter, and tied her apron with practiced ease. This was her sanctuary, the place she rebuilt herself one bread loaf, one cookie batch at a time. She whispered, "Thank you for another day, Lord," as she always did before turning on the ovens. The familiar hum filled the room, steady and reassuring. In this kitchen, she had learned how healing could smell like cinnamon and freshly baked hope. Melanie moved rhythmically, mixing ingredients with the same calm strength the town admired. Locals often said, "She's got a heart like warm apple pie, soft where it matters and strong where it counts." She smiled at that, even though she never fully believed compliments about herself. The truth was, she had been broken once, deeply, publicly. But grace had stitched her back together. She'd learned to measure her days not by the pain of the past but by the kindness she could offer. As she kneaded dough, she hummed a Christmas hymn under her breath. The bakery smelled like redemption. By 7, the shop was open, and the first regular of the morning walked in. "Morning, sweetheart," Mrs. Hartley said, brushing snow off her old quilted jacket. "Got cinnamon rolls today?" "Always for you," Melanie replied with a warm smile, sliding a tray onto the counter. "Mrs." Hartley took a deep breath, savoring the aroma. "Best thing in town, just like your heart, honey." Melanie laughed, shaking her head. "You say that every day." As the morning crowd grew, Melanie moved from customer to customer with grace that came from healed places. She remembered when she used to hide behind the counter, afraid people saw her as the girl Henry destroyed. But over the years, she realized small towns didn't just remember wounds. They also celebrated victories. And Melanie's victory was quiet but unmistakable. She had become the woman she once prayed to grow into, one who could stand without bitterness, one who smiled without pretending. A group of kids pushed through the door, cheeks red, boots dripping melted snow on the floor. Miss Melanie, can we have cocoa?" She laughed. "Only if you help me stir the marshmallows again." They cheered, running toward the back counter where she kept the oversized pot. This was their tradition, one of many she created after realizing she could bless kids who didn't have much. The town joked she was the unofficial Christmas mama of the community. But the truth was, Melanie simply loved filling empty spaces, because she once had so many of her own. While the children drank cocoa, Pastor Graham stopped by, stamping snow off his boots. "Morning, Melanie. Big day for the Christmas drive," he said, handing her a clipboard. "We're short on winter coats for the teens." her brows knitted with concern. "I'll spread the word. We'll get them what they need. No child gets cold on my watch. That's my girl," the pastor said with fatherly affection. Melanie felt a warm flush at the encouragement. Faith had become her anchor, the one thing that never walked away. The morning flew by with laughter, holiday music, and the steady rhythm of baking trays sliding in and out of ovens. Melanie barely noticed how busy she was until she stepped outside to shake crumbs from a rug. That's when she froze. Footprints in the snow, large, familiar, led up to the bakery window and back again. A shiver crawled up her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. "No," she whispered, heart thudding. But the feeling was unmistakable. Henry had been here. She leaned against the brick wall for a moment, steadying herself as winter air stung her cheeks. It had been years. She had learned to breathe without him, to live without him, to thrive without him. So why did the simple knowledge of his presence shake her bones? She whispered a prayer into the cold. "Lord, please help me face whatever this is." A neighbor passing by called out, "You okay, hun?" Melanie forced a soft smile. "Yeah, just a long morning." But her heart knew better. Inside, she tried to refocus, brushing flour from the counter with a trembling hand. She didn't fear Henry. She feared the memories he carried. The girl she was back then had been naive, open, unguarded. The woman she was now had scars, but those scars had become her strength. Even so, the thought of him looking at her, after everything, made her stomach twist. She prayed again quietly, "Let me stand in who you made me, not who I used to be." And peace settled over her like a warm quilt. Near midday, Melanie took a break outside, holding a steaming mug of cocoa cupped between her palms. Snowflakes landed on her sleeves, melting instantly. Across the street, the town square buzzed with activity. Volunteers setting up tables for the Christmas drive. She smiled, proud of what this little community accomplished every year. Kids would wake up on Christmas morning with gifts, coats, and meals because the town cared enough to show up. And because God kept multiplying her small efforts into something bigger. This was her real miracle. A soft breeze carried laughter from the gazebo, where teens rehearsed Christmas carols for the evening show. Their harmonies drifted beautifully through the cold air, warming hearts that passed by. The sound reminded Melanie how far she'd come from the lonely winters of her past. Times when heartbreak felt bigger than the sky, and silence felt like her only companion. Now she had purpose, people, and peace. She didn't need Henry anymore, she had long accepted that. But she had no idea her heart still remembered the shape of him. She sipped her cocoa, trying to ground herself. A memory flickered. Henry laughing in the snow, Henry kissing her forehead at sunset, Henry promising forever, promises he broke before the next snowfall. She closed her eyes, pushing the memory away like a stray ember that threatened to burn again. It didn't matter. She had survived. She had become someone even she hadn't expected. "Melanie," someone called. She turned to see her friend Clara waving frantically from across the street. "You gonna help us with the ornament table or what?" Melanie laughed softly, grateful for the distraction. "Give me 2 minutes, I'll be right there." As she re-entered the bakery, she didn't notice a figure standing half-hidden behind the corner of the bookstore. Henry watched her, breath shallow, as if witnessing a miracle he had no right to claim. He saw the warmth in her smile, the confidence in her steps, the gentle authority she carried now. She wasn't the girl he left behind. She wasn't even close. She had grown into the kind of woman he used to think he never deserved. And seeing her now confirmed it. God had done something extraordinary with her life. Something he hadn't been part of. Something he wished he could take credit for but knew he couldn't. Melanie returned to the counter to help a customer choose holiday cookies. She didn't see Henry slip closer to the window, drawn to her as if the bakery itself were pulling him in. Her laugh, so familiar and yet somehow new, hit him like a warm gust of wind in a freezing storm. He rested a hand against the window frame, steadying himself. She looked so whole, so radiant, so steady. He whispered to himself, "What did I do walking away from her?" But the question had no answer that felt small enough. As the afternoon settled in, Melanie gathered leftover pastries for the evening's charity tables. She boxed each item carefully, praying quietly over the families who would receive them. "Let this bless someone who needs it, Lord." Her heart swelled with gratitude. Purpose had replaced the emptiness Henry left. She didn't hear the footsteps crunch softly behind her in the snow. Didn't see Henry standing at the edge of the walkway. Didn't know the past was steps away from catching its breath. Henry opened his mouth to say her name, but the words stuck like frost in his throat. He wasn't ready for her eyes, her voice, her reaction. None of it. Instead, he stepped back, heart racing, hiding before she could turn around. He felt ridiculous, a grown man frightened by the woman he once broke. But seeing her so strong, so alive, made his own soul feel painfully small. He whispered, "She's better without me." But the ache in his chest disagreed. Melanie locked the bakery door for her lunch break, hugging the pastry boxes to her chest. She glanced at the quiet street, sensing something she couldn't quite name. A shift in the air, a familiar presence, a whisper from old winters. But she shook it off, reminding herself she lived in the present, not the past. Snowflakes danced around her as she crossed the street toward the charity tables, her breath forming soft clouds. Behind her, hidden from view, Henry leaned against the bakery wall, eyes closed, wrestling with every regret he ever carried. The town had seen who Melanie became without him, and now, painfully, beautifully so had he. Henry woke before dawn, unable to shake the image of Melanie laughing in the bakery. He had seen her happiness, her purpose, her confidence, and it unsettled him more than any business loss ever had. He stared at the inn ceiling, listening to the heater hum like a tired heartbeat. He whispered, "God, what am I even doing here?" But the silence felt like an invitation, not an answer. Outside, snow fell in soft sheets covering yesterday's footprints. He wished it could cover his past the same way. By mid-morning, he stepped outside into the cold, the kind that pinched the skin and cleared the mind. The town was already awake, decorated like a living Christmas card. Strings of lights, wreaths on every shop door, and music drifting faintly from speakers along Main Street. As he walked, people paused just long enough to recognize him. Some nodded stiffly, others whispered behind mittens and scarves, words he didn't need to hear to understand. Small towns forget nothing, especially the wounds you caused. Henry stuffed his hands into his jacket pockets, wishing he could shrink himself into the wind. A man carried firewood to a truck and muttered, "Well, look what the storm dragged back." Another woman whispered, "He's got some nerve showing his face." Their voices weren't cruel. They were honest in the way only small towns dare to be. And honesty stings when you spent years lying to yourself. Henry nodded politely, accepting every word like a deserved sentence. He felt the weight of a reputation he alone had created. When he reached the square, volunteers were already preparing tables for the Christmas drive. He heard Pastor Graham's warm voice rising over the crowd. "Let's make sure every family gets a blessing this year." Henry stepped closer, drawn by the energy and the memory of belonging to something bigger than himself. He used to love community events, before ego became his only compass. Now the sight of neighbors working side by side felt like a world he once abandoned, one he wasn't sure he was allowed to enter again. He stood at the edge, unsure if he should stay or walk away. Clara spotted him first. Her brows lifted in surprise, then dropped into a cool, guarded expression. "Well, I'll be," she murmured, crossing her arms over her coat. Henry swallowed. "Hi, Clara. Didn't expect to see you, that's for sure." "I didn't expect to be here either," he admitted. Her silence said everything she didn't. "You hurt her." Clara's voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the cold like a blade. Henry looked down, snow gathering on his boots. "I know. She cried for months, Henry." "You remember that?" His throat tightened painfully. "I remember everything." Clara exhaled, breath forming a bitter cloud. "Well, small towns remember too." He nodded, accepting the truth like a bruise forming beneath the skin. "I'm not here to make excuses," he said quietly. Clara studied him, eyes narrowing as if searching for sincerity. "Are you here to break her again?" The question cracked something inside him. "No," he whispered. "I'm here because I broke myself too." And for the first time, Clara's eyes softened. Barely. Before she could respond, Melanie appeared from behind the gazebo, carrying a box of winter coats. Henry froze, breath lodged somewhere between hope and terror. She looked stunning in her white knit scarf and red sweater, cheeks rosy from the cold. Her presence warmed the air around her, even though she hadn't seen him yet. His heart pounded like a warning bell. Clara whispered, "Here's your moment, if you're brave enough." Melanie set the box down and dusted snow off her gloves. Then she turned, and her eyes landed on him. The world fell silent, as if even the snowflakes paused midair to witness it. Her expression didn't harden, but it didn't soften either. It simply steadied, like someone bracing for a storm she'd already survived once. Henry swallowed hard. "Hi, Mel." Her name on his lips felt foreign, as if it belonged to another lifetime. Melanie drew a quiet breath, shoulders rising beneath her coat. "Henry," just one word. But her voice carried 1,000 unsaid truths: hurt, growth, distance, strength. She didn't step closer. She didn't step back. She simply stood, grounded in the woman God had made her. "I didn't expect to see you," she said. "I didn't expect to come back," he replied. Melanie glanced at the volunteers, then back at him. "This isn't a great moment to talk." "I know," he said quickly. "I'm not trying to make things harder." Her brows lifted slightly. "Haven't you already done that?" He winced, the truth landing with painful accuracy. "Yes. And I'm sorry. More sorry than you'll ever know." Melanie looked away, eyes fixed on a child handing out candy canes nearby. "That apology took years. I didn't know how to say it until now." "Well," she said softly, "the girl you owed it to is gone." And the words hit him harder than her silence ever did. She continued, voice gentle but resolute. "I'm not angry anymore, Henry. God worked that out of me a long time ago." Hope flickered painfully in him, until she added, "But forgiveness doesn't mean trust. It doesn't mean you get a place in my life again." He nodded, feeling the sting but also the fairness of it. "I understand." Melanie's eyes softened, not with affection, but with truth. "I rebuilt everything you broke," she said, the wind catching her hair. "And God rebuilt me. Piece by piece, winter by winter." Henry felt tears burn behind his eyes. "I can see that," he whispered, "and I'm glad." Truly. Melanie studied him for a long moment, as if trying to read the man he'd become. "You look different." "I am," he replied, barely holding himself together. Before he could say more, Pastor Graham approached them with a warm smile. "Melanie, we need you for the coat table, dear." Then he noticed Henry. His smile dimmed slightly, the way a pastor's does when he recognizes a familiar sinner. "Henry Carter. Been a long time." Henry bowed his head. "Yes, sir. You here to help or just here to look around?" the pastor asked. Henry hesitated, then said the simplest truth he had. "I'm here to make things right. However I can." Pastor Graham studied him with eyes that saw more than most men ever would. Finally, he nodded, then grabbed some gloves. "We can always use willing hands." Henry blinked, surprised by the small mercy. Melanie, equally surprised, watched quietly, guarded, but curious. Henry slipped on a pair of work gloves and lifted a box of canned goods. It was heavy, but the weight steadied him. Around him, people watched, some skeptical, some cautiously open, all remembering. He felt every stare, every whisper, every thread of history pulling tight around him. But he didn't run from it this time. He worked, and something in the air shifted. Barely, but undeniably. Melanie stepped back, watching Henry lift another box, snow gathering in his hair as he worked without complaint. She didn't know what to make of this new version of him. Quiet, humble, stripped of pride. A man who looked like he'd walked through winter and finally understood the meaning of warmth. She whispered to herself, "Lord, what are you doing?" Because despite everything she believed, everything she'd healed from, seeing him try stirred something she wasn't ready to name. And for the first time since Henry returned, she wondered, not if he had changed, but why God brought him back now. By the time Saturday rolled around, the town square looked like a Christmas movie set come to life. Tables lined the sidewalks, stacked with canned goods, wrapped gifts, and winter coats in every color. The gazebo was strung with twinkling lights, a big hand-painted sign reading, "No child forgotten this Christmas." Snowflakes drifted lazily through the air, catching glitter from the decorations. Kids ran around with Santa hats and reindeer headbands, cheeks flushed from the cold. The whole town buzzed with a sense of purpose and warmth. And right in the middle of it all stood Melanie, steady, glowing, in her element. She moved from table to table, checking lists, thanking volunteers, adjusting bows on gift boxes. Every so often someone would call, "Melanie, we're short on gloves over here," or, "Hey Mel, can you double-check the family list?" And she would respond with her simple, "On it," followed by that calm, reassuring smile. To the town, she was the quiet engine behind the whole thing. To herself, she was just a girl God had carried through too many winters to waste one. She had no idea this particular drive would mark a turning point in more lives than hers. Henry arrived early, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, nerves wound tight. He almost turned around twice before reaching the square. But then he saw the tables, the kids, the flyers, and Melanie laughing with a volunteer. Something in him anchored to the ground. He'd run long enough. Today he decided he would stay, in the discomfort, in the consequences, in the work. He whispered, "Help me not mess this up, God," unsure who he was talking to more, heaven or himself. Clara spotted him hovering at the edge of the square. "You gonna stand there staring all day or grab a box and be useful?" she called out. Her tone was teasing, but there was a test buried in it. Henry managed a small, grateful smile. "Point me where you need me." She jerked her head toward a stack of donated coats. "Start there, city boy. We sort by size, not by brand." He nodded, stepping into the organized chaos. One small act of obedience at a time. As he worked, Henry noticed something he hadn't expected. The more he focused on the needs in front of him, the quieter his shame grew. Sorting coats, carrying boxes, checking off lists. None of it was complicated. But every simple task tugged him away from self-pity and toward purpose. A little boy ran up to him, tugging at his sleeve. "Mister, do you think there'll be a coat that fits my little brother too?" Henry swallowed, feeling his throat tighten. "Yeah, buddy. We'll make sure of it." The boy grinned and ran off, shouting, "Mama, he said there will." Henry watched him go, a strange ache swelling in his chest. He had spent years chasing deals that left people richer but not better. Here, a simple sentence made a child feel seen. It humbled him more than any boardroom ever had. He looked up and caught Pastor Graham watching him from across the square. The pastor nodded once, like a man who had just seen a crack of light through an old door. Melanie tried not to look at Henry, but her eyes betrayed her. Every time she turned, there he was, lifting boxes, listening to instructions, helping kids reach the cookie platters. He didn't complain, didn't grandstand, didn't act like he was doing anyone a favor. For a man who once loved being the center of attention, he seemed content staying at the edges. She wasn't sure what to do with that. "You okay?" Clara murmured, noticing the flicker in her gaze. Melanie sighed. "I don't know yet." At one point, a teen volunteer tripped over a cord and nearly sent an entire table of gifts to the ground. Henry lunged forward, catching the edge just in time. Wrapping paper crinkled, bows squashed, but nothing broke. The teen stared at him, wide-eyed. "Dude, I almost ruined Christmas." Henry laughed softly. "Nah, you just added a good story to it." Melanie watched from a distance as he patted the boy on the shoulder. There was kindness in the gesture she didn't remember from the past. Late morning, the temperature dropped, and a sharp wind swept through the square. Kids huddled closer to cocoa stands, blowing on steaming cups. Melanie rubbed her gloved hands together, glancing at the table labeled "Teen Coats, Low Stock." Her heart sank. "We really are short," she murmured. "We're not going to have enough." Pastor Graham joined her, concern clouding his eyes. "We'll stretch what we have as far as it'll go," he said. "God's never failed us yet." She nodded, but a weight settled over her anyway. Henry overheard them as he carried another box to the food table, short on coats. Not enough for the teens, the ones who already knew too much about doing without. He stopped mid-step, the box suddenly feeling twice as heavy. He had the means to fix this. That realization hit him like a thrown snowball to the chest. But helping anonymously meant no one would know. Helping openly meant facing what the town thought of him trying to buy redemption. He set the box down and stepped away from the crowd, pulling out his phone with shaking fingers. He scrolled through contacts until he found the number of a partner who owed him a favor. "Hey, it's Henry. I need a rush delivery," he said, voice low. "Winter coats, new. All sizes for teens. Today." On the other end, there was a pause, then a slow whistle. "That'll cost you." "I know," Henry replied. "Send me the invoice. Just make it happen." Sometimes restitution wasn't a speech, it was a wire transfer. When he hung up, Henry exhaled a shaky breath into the cold air. He didn't care if anyone thanked him. He just couldn't stand the thought of kids shivering on Christmas because he did nothing. He whispered, "Let this be about them, not me," surprised at how natural the prayer sounded. Snowflakes landed on his lashes, melting into the corners of his eyes. For once, he didn't hide the dampness. Maybe God was thawing places he'd kept frozen on purpose. An hour later, a delivery truck pulled up to the far side of the square. People turned, curiosity lighting their faces. "Anyone here order half a department store?" the driver called out, jumping down from the cab. He handed a clipboard to Henry. "You Henry Carter?" Heads turned, whispers rose, all eyes locked on him. Henry felt the weight of the moment press into his ribs like a hand. Melanie's heart pounded as she stepped closer, confusion knitting her brows. "What is this?" she asked. Henry cleared his throat, suddenly wishing the snow would swallow him whole. "Extra coats," he said quietly. "For the teens. So no one goes home cold." The air thickened with unspoken suspicions. Is he showing off? Trying to buy forgiveness? Henry forced himself to meet Melanie's eyes. "I'm not asking for anything," he added. "I just wanted to help." Pastor Graham took the clipboard, reading the invoice details. His brows lifted slightly. "This is a lot, son." Henry shrugged, nerves fraying. "I've wasted more money on things that never mattered." The pastor studied him for a long second, then said, "Well then, I'd say this is a much better investment." He clapped a hand on Henry's shoulder. "Church folks call this putting your money where your repentance is." A few people chuckled under their breath. The tension loosened just a little. Melanie watched volunteers open the boxes, pulling out brand new coats in every size and color. Teens who had been lingering uncertainly at the edge of the square moved closer, eyes shining. One girl slipped her arms into a deep blue coat, zipping it up with trembling hands. "It's warm," she whispered, tears gathering in her eyes. Her mother covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Melanie's chest ached as she watched hug after hug, smile after smile. This was the kingdom of God in motion. She turned back to Henry, something unfamiliar stirring in her. "I don't know your reasons," she said quietly. "And I'm not here to judge them. That's between you and God." He nodded, heart hammering. "Fair enough. But," she added, glancing at the kids twirling in their new coats, "whatever made you do this?" "They're grateful. I'm grateful." The words surprised even her as they left her mouth. So did the softness in her eyes. For the first time since he'd come back, Henry felt something other than shame rooting him to this town. He felt purpose. Not the kind that stroked his ego, but the kind that emptied him out for someone else's good. He looked around at the square, at the lights, the kids, the community, at Melanie standing in the middle of it all. A thought settled over him quietly. This is what I walked away from. But another thought, gentler, followed. And maybe, by grace, this is what I'm being invited to serve now. Small towns, remember. But on a snowy Christmas drive, Henry began to believe that maybe, just maybe, God restored too. The Christmas drive wrapped up as daylight softened into the gold-blue hush of early evening. Volunteers drifted home, arms full of leftover cookies and laughter. Melanie gathered the last donation forms, her breath forming soft clouds in the cold air. Henry lingered near the gazebo, unsure whether to say goodbye or disappear quietly. Lights flickered on around the square, turning every snowflake into a drifting spark. For a moment, neither of them moved, It felt like the world was holding its breath. Melanie approached him slowly, footsteps crunching on the snow-dusted ground. "Thank you again for the coats," she said, her voice steady but gentle. Henry nodded, unable to look her fully in the eyes. "It was the least I could do." "Maybe so," she replied. But it mattered. Her words warmed him more than the scarf around his neck. For the first time he felt seen, not for who he'd been, but for who he was trying to become. A gust of wind swept through the square, knocking over a stack of empty gift boxes near the gazebo. Melanie startled, and Henry rushed forward instinctively. The wind intensified, swirling the lightweight boxes everywhere like cardboard snowflakes. "Hold on," Henry said, trying to catch them as they flew. Melanie grabbed the other side, laughing breathlessly as one box hit her shoulder, but the icy ground betrayed them. Henry slipped first. Then Melanie slipped with him. They landed in a heap of tangled limbs and scattered boxes, both gasping from the sudden fall. For a brief moment, silence wrapped around them like the softest snowfall. Then Melanie burst into laughter, a warm, melodic sound that echoed across the empty square. Henry stared at her, stunned by the purity of that laugh. It had been years since he'd heard it. Years since he'd realized he was the reason it had once disappeared. His chest tightened with something painfully beautiful. "I can't believe that just happened," Melanie said, brushing snow from her scarf. Henry sat up slowly, rubbing the back of his head. "Trust me. Neither can I." The wind calmed as quickly as it had come, leaving behind only quiet, glittering snow. Melanie touched her elbow, wincing slightly. "You okay?" Henry asked, his voice softer than he meant it to be. "Yeah," she said, though her eyes revealed a flicker of discomfort. He leaned forward without thinking. "Here, let me check," he murmured, gently examining her arm through her coat. She tensed, unprepared for the closeness, but didn't pull away. His touch wasn't confident or rehearsed, just careful, almost reverent. "You're not hurt," he said softly. "Just a little bruised." Melanie nodded, swallowing. The moment was too intimate, too fragile, too real. She stepped back first, needing air, but Henry didn't stand. He stayed kneeling on the snow-covered ground, elbows on his knees, head bowed. Melanie frowned gently. "You okay?" He let out a shaky breath that seemed to come from a place far deeper than the fall. "Mel," his voice cracked on her name. "I'm not who I used to be. And I hate who I was with you." The confession spilled out like a wound finally opening. She froze, breath catching in her throat. Henry lifted his head, eyes glassy, jaw trembling, pride finally cracked open. "I said things that destroyed you. I was cruel, arrogant, stupid, and every day since I've wished I could take it back." He dragged a hand through his hair, snowflakes melting instantly against the heat of his skin. "Seeing you today, seeing who you became without me, it breaks me in ways I didn't know a person could break." Melanie's heart thudded painfully. This was not the boy who left her. "Henry," she whispered, unsure if she was comforting him or warning herself. He shook his head. "No, I need to say this. For years I told myself you were better off forgetting me, but I never forgot you." His breath trembled. "You were the only good thing about who I was back then, and I threw you away like none of it mattered." Melanie felt tears sting her eyes despite her resolve. His voice carried the weight of a man who'd spent too many nights grieving himself, and somehow that grief reached her too. She knelt beside him, not touching him, but closer than she had allowed since his return. "Henry, apology or not, the past can't be rewritten." "I know," he whispered, "but maybe I can be rewritten." The vulnerability in his voice shattered the last icy layer around her heart. Snowflakes gathered on their hair, their coats, their eyelashes, tiny witnesses to a moment years overdue. Melanie looked at him fully, seeing not the boy who broke her, but the man who was finally breaking open in return. "I'm not asking for another chance," he said softly. "I'm not asking for forgiveness today. I'm not asking for anything." Melanie searched his face, trying to read every flicker of sincerity. "I just want you to know," he continued, "that I see what God did in your life, and I'm grateful you became someone strong. Even if my brokenness pushed you there. Tears filled her eyes even as she shook her head. That's not how grace works, she whispered. No one earns it, and no one causes it. Henry's lips parted in a trembling exhale. Still, I'm sorry. From the deepest, rawest place I know how to reach. I'm sorry for every winter you spent alone because of me. The square felt impossibly quiet. The kind of quiet that follows truth spoken after too many years of silence. Melanie looked at him. Really looked. At the remorse. At the humility. At the man she never expected to kneel in front of her again. She stood slowly, the snowfall thickening around them. Henry remained on his knees, not in desperation but in surrender. Melanie's hand hovered at her side, trembling with 1,000 contradictions. Henry, you can stand. His voice cracked. I don't feel like I deserve to. Maybe not, she replied gently. But standing is how you walk into who you're becoming. Her words hit him like a hand lifting his chin to heaven. He rose unsteadily, brushing snow from his coat. Melanie kept a respectful distance, but something in her gaze had shifted. A softness mingled with caution, a crack of light through an old door. You should head inside, he said quietly, voice raw. It's freezing, and you've had a long day. I could say the same about you, she replied. He smiled faintly through the ache. Yeah, but this kind of cold feels deserved. Melanie shook her head at him. Pain isn't a punishment, Henry. Sometimes it's just a sign we're thawing. He blinked, the words sinking deep. A long, fragile silence followed, filled only by the soft whisper of snow settling on the gazebo roof. Lights flickered overhead, casting golden halos around their silhouettes. It looked like a scene from a Christmas movie, one where something holy was happening in ordinary clothing. Melanie hugged her arms around herself, grounding her trembling heart. Henry didn't dare move. You're different, she said finally. Quiet, careful, honest. Henry swallowed hard. I'm trying to be. And that's between you and God, she added softly. Her voice wasn't cold. It was real, humble, protective of the healing she'd fought for. But what you're doing here, helping, apologizing. She hesitated. It matters, Henry. The words were gentler than forgiveness, but heavier than hope. Henry stepped back, brushing snow from his hair. I don't expect anything from you, Mel. Not friendship, not trust, not a place in your life. He lifted his eyes, raw and unguarded. I just don't want to be the man you remember anymore. Her breath hitched, because she didn't recognize him at all. Not in the best, most frightening way possible. Melanie exhaled slowly, watching him with a heart she didn't realize was thawing. Go home and rest, Henry, she said gently. We'll talk, when the time is right. He nodded. It was more mercy than he deserved. As she walked away, her red scarf trailing in the wind, Henry whispered a shaky prayer he never expected to say again. God, don't let me waste this second chance at becoming the man you wanted me to be. And somewhere deep in the winter night, grace took root. Christmas Eve settled over the small town like a blessing wrapped in silence. Snow drifted gently from the sky, covering rooftops and sidewalks in a soft white glow. The church bell rang in the distance, calling everyone to the evening service. Warm light spilled through the stained glass windows, painting the snow in shades of gold, amber, and crimson. Families hurried inside with scarves and mittens, shaking snow from their hair. Melanie walked among them, her red wool coat fluttering gently in the wind. And somewhere behind her, Henry walked too, steps hesitant, heart trembling. Henry had not set foot in a church in years. The wooden steps felt heavier beneath him than any boardroom stage he had ever stood on. Inside, the sanctuary glowed with candlelight, wreaths, and the sweet scent of pine. People murmured greetings. Merry Christmas. Blessings. Good to see you tonight. He nodded nervously, unsure whether he deserved to be seen at all. But when the choir began humming "O Holy Night," something inside him cracked, like ice breaking under the first warmth of spring. Melanie found her seat near the aisle, unaware that Henry had slipped into the pew behind her. She clasped her hands together, looking up at the cross illuminated by soft white lights. Her heart swelled with gratitude for all God had rebuilt in her life. but she also felt the unfamiliar ache of a story not yet finished. When she sensed someone behind her, her breath wavered. She didn't turn, but she didn't need to. Some presences you recognize without seeing. Pastor Graham stepped up to the pulpit, his voice warm as a fireplace flame. "Tonight," he began, "we celebrate a Savior who came not for the perfect, but for the broken." Henry's gaze dropped instantly. "We celebrate a God who takes the pieces we ruined and makes something beautiful." Henry's chest tightened, breath stuttering in his throat. It felt as if the sermon had been crafted for him alone, and for the first time in years, shame didn't drown him. Grace did. As the choir began the first verse of O Holy Night, Henry closed his eyes. The notes rose gently around him, wrapping him in warmth he didn't feel he deserved. He remembered childhood Christmases, before ambition hardened him, before pride became his compass, before Melanie's tears carved guilt into his soul. The lyrics spoke of weary souls rejoicing, and Henry realized he was tired enough to finally listen. Melanie felt tears prick her eyes as the choir sang, though she didn't know why. Maybe it was gratitude. Maybe it was the memory of winters when she begged God to make her heart whole again. Or maybe it was sensing the man she once loved unraveling behind her. She whispered, "Lord, help me hear you tonight." And for the first time since Henry's return, her prayer didn't tremble with fear. It trembled with possibility. When the service ended, people lingered to exchange hugs and Christmas wishes. Melanie stepped outside, snow falling like powdered sugar from heaven. She inhaled the crisp air, letting it soothe her conflicted heart. She didn't expect Henry to follow her out so quickly, but he did. "Mel," he said, voice raw. She turned slowly, and when she saw his eyes, red, damp, humbled, her breath caught. He stepped closer, though he left a respectful distance between them. "I wasn't going to talk to you tonight," he admitted. "But that sermon, something broke open inside me." Melanie swallowed hard, unsure if she was ready for this conversation. But the snow fell softly between them, like a curtain of grace. "Henry," she murmured, "you don't have to force anything." "I'm not forcing," he said. "I'm confessing." He took a shaky breath, exhaling fog into the icy night. "I left this town because I was terrified. Terrified of not being enough. Terrified of loving you more than my pride." Melanie's heart tightened. "I thought running would protect me from my own flaws," he continued. "But all it did was carve them deeper." His voice cracked. "And hurting you was the worst sin of my life." Melanie blinked, stunned by the honesty in his words. "I tried to pretend you didn't matter," he said softly. "But every Christmas, every winter, your name came back with the snow." His eyes glistened. "You were the one thing in my life that ever felt pure, and I crushed it because I didn't know how to hold something that holy." Melanie sucked in a painful breath. No one had ever spoken to her like that. She hugged her coat tighter around herself, snowflakes gathering on her hair. "Henry, the past is done, but its weight isn't," he whispered. He stepped 1 inch closer, still careful, still humble. "I'm not here to take anything from you. Not forgiveness. Not space in your life." He shook his head. "I'm here because I need you to know who I became after losing you." Melanie hesitated, torn between past pain and present truth. Henry continued, "I chased success trying to fill the emptiness I created when I left, but none of it mattered. Not the money, not the titles, not the applause." He swallowed, tears sliding down despite the freezing air. "Nothing mattered because I wasn't the man I wanted to be." He looked straight into her, soul bared, "And somehow, you became the woman I always wished I deserved." Something inside Melanie softened, slowly, cautiously, but undeniably. This was no longer the arrogant boy who walked away. This was a broken man trying to find his way back to God, not to her, and that distinction mattered more than he realized. She stepped closer, her boots sinking into the snow. "Henry, I don't know what this means yet, but I see you trying, and that matters." Henry's breath hitched, relief flickering through his eyes like candlelight. "I don't need anything from you," he repeated. I just needed you to know the truth." Melanie nodded slowly. The wind gathered around them, gentle as a whispered blessing. For the first time, Henry didn't look tortured by her silence. He looked grateful to simply be heard. "Thank you for coming tonight," Melanie said softly. He laughed under his breath, wiping his cheek. "I think God dragged me inside." She smiled. A small, fragile smile that pierced him deeper than any sermon. "Sometimes he does that," she murmured. Henry nodded, looking up at the falling snow. It felt like he was speaking straight into the cracks. Melanie followed his gaze to the sky, snowflakes drifting onto her lashes. "God isn't done with you, Henry," she said gently. "Not even close." Her words struck him harder than any rebuke ever had. "Mel, do you really believe that?" She nodded once, certain, steady, anchored. "With everything in me." Her certainty undid him. He pressed a shaking hand against his chest as if steadying a heart that had been fractured for years. "Thank you," he whispered. Not for forgiveness, not for hope, but for seeing the man he was trying desperately to become. It was a gift he didn't know how to accept. They stood there under the glow of Christmas lights, in the silence of a snow-covered night. Two souls who had once shattered each other, now standing on the holy ground of truth. Melanie finally stepped back, breath forming a misty cloud between them. "We'll talk again, after Christmas," she said softly. Henry nodded, understanding the mercy wrapped inside that boundary. "Good night, Mel," he whispered, voice full of reverence. And as she walked away, he whispered into the cold, "Lord, thank you for not giving up on me, even when I did." Christmas morning dawned with a sky the color of soft pink roses, as if the heavens themselves were blushing with hope. The town was quiet, wrapped in a thick blanket of snow that sparkled like crushed diamonds. Melanie stepped out onto her porch, pulling her knitted shawl tighter around her shoulders. The cold nipped at her cheeks, but the peace in her chest warmed her from within. She whispered, "Thank you, Lord," watching her breath drift upward like a tiny offering. Christmas had once been a painful reminder of loneliness. Now, it felt like a reminder of everything God had restored. Across town, Henry awoke to the muffled stillness of snow outside his window. He lay in bed for a long time, staring at the ceiling, trying to absorb the weight of last night's confession. Part of him felt emptied, like he had finally set down a burden he'd carried too long. Another part felt exposed, fragile in ways he hadn't expected. He whispered into the quiet, "What now, God?" But the only answer was the hush of snow falling outside. Sometimes silence is mercy. By mid-morning, the town gathered for the Christmas Day service and community brunch. Melanie walked through the square, arms full of donated pies, waving at familiar faces. Children darted past her, showing off new coats from the Christmas drive. One girl wrapped her arms around Melanie's waist, saying, "Thank you, Miss Melanie. Santa definitely heard you." Melanie laughed softly, gently smoothing the girl's hat. Moments like that filled her heart with a warmth she couldn't explain. It wasn't pride, it was purpose. Henry arrived minutes later, hands shoved in his coat pockets, trying to look invisible. But people noticed. People always noticed. Some stared with guarded curiosity, others with softened expressions after seeing his efforts yesterday. He ignored the whispers. He wasn't here for validation. He was here because something in him longed for community. The very thing he'd once rejected. He searched the crowd instinctively for Melanie. He found her near the cocoa stand, laughing with two older ladies from church. Her red scarf fluttered lightly in the wind, catching sunlight like flame. He hesitated to approach her, afraid of breaking whatever fragile peace existed between them. But then a boy ran up to him, tugging on his coat sleeve. "Mr. Henry, the pastor said you can help hang the star." Henry blinked. "The star?" The boy nodded eagerly. "For the nativity stage, you're tall enough." Henry laughed softly, something warm stirring in his chest. "Lead the way, champ." The boy grabbed his glove and pulled him toward the gazebo where volunteers struggled with a golden wooden star. As Henry lifted it easily into place, the crowd clapped, lightly, unsure, but genuine. He felt a strange heat spread through him. Was this what belonging felt like? He risked a glance toward Melanie. She was watching him, not with fear, not with anger, but with cautious amazement. He wasn't posturing, he wasn't performing, he was simply helping, a version of him she had never met before. And her heart, a heart healed by God, not by him, softened in spite of itself. Later, as the brunch tables filled with casseroles and pies, Melanie carried a tray of gingerbread cookies to the children's table. Suddenly, she stumbled on a patch of ice beneath the snow. Before she could fall, a strong hand steadied her from behind. "Careful there," Henry murmured. She straightened, breath catching. "Thank you." Their eyes met. Just for a second, but the second felt impossibly long. She stepped away quickly, more rattled by the moment than she wanted to admit. Henry watched her go, resisting the urge to interpret the flicker in her eyes as something more than surprise. He knew better now than to assume anything. Instead, he grabbed a broom and brushed the icy patch clean so no one else would slip. No applause, no witnesses, just quiet service. A posture he was slowly learning. Inside the community center, Pastor Graham gathered everyone for prayer. Melanie stood near the front, while Henry slipped toward the back. The pastor prayed for the lonely, the grieving, the hopeful, the seeking. Henry closed his eyes, feeling every word lodge into the deepest parts of him. Then the pastor said, "Lord, thank you for the ones you bring home, even when they don't know how to stay yet." Henry's breath caught. He wondered if the pastor meant him, or if God simply did. After brunch, families exchanged hugs and Merry Christmas wishes. Melanie carried leftover food trays to the kitchen, humming quietly. She didn't notice Henry standing at the window, watching her gently stack plates and tidy counters. There was something holy in her ordinariness, something he had never valued enough. She was steady where he had been reckless, rooted where he had been restless. And for the first time, Henry wasn't ashamed of the comparison. He was inspired by it. Outside, the snow thickened, falling in soft waves as children built lopsided snowmen near the gazebo. Henry stepped out into the cold, letting snow land on his eyelashes. He watched families take photos in front of the giant tree, string lights reflecting on their faces. And he felt a pang. Not jealousy, but longing. Not for romance, not even for Melanie. Not yet, but for the version of himself who could stand in a crowd like this without feeling like a stranger. He whispered, "Lord, help me learn how to stay." As he walked back toward the tables, he spotted a small group of teens huddled around a bench. Their coats, his coats, shone brightly against the snow. One boy noticed him and lifted a shy hand in thanks. Henry nodded, throat tightening with quiet emotion. He had never given a Christmas gift that mattered this much. The moment filled him with a humility that bordered on awe. For once, power meant nothing. Compassion meant everything. He noticed the charity donation box sitting half full near the stage. Without hesitation, he pulled out his wallet and slipped in a folded envelope. No one saw it. No one needed to. He whispered a prayer he barely recognized. "Use this better than I ever could." Then he stepped away, letting God take the lead. Behind him, Pastor Graham watched silently and smiled. Melanie soon returned to the square, cheeks pink from the kitchen heat meeting winter air. She spotted Henry handing cocoa to two little boys whose gloves didn't match. The tenderness in the simple gesture pierced her unexpectedly. Was this the same man who once shattered her heart? He looked redeemed, not by her forgiveness, but by something divine. Her pulse fluttered with something she refused to name. The choir gathered near the tree, preparing for the evening carol sing-along. Melanie joined them, standing in the second row. Henry lingered at the edge of the crowd, unsure whether to stay or slip away. But then the music began, soft, warm, unmistakably sacred. Silent night, holy night. Melanie's voice rose gently above the others, pure as snowfall. Henry felt the sound of her voice like a prayer he wished he remembered how to pray. When the final note faded, the applause rippled like warmth through the frozen air. Melanie stepped away from the group, and for a heartbeat their eyes met across the crowd. She didn't look away this time. Instead, she held his gaze, steady, quiet, wondering. He felt a single tear escape, warm against the cold, because in her eyes, he saw something he hadn't seen since boyhood. God wasn't done with him. As families dispersed, Melanie walked past Henry, brushing lightly against him as she passed. "Good night, Henry," she said softly. No fear, no anger, just truth. "Good night, Mel," he whispered, breath forming a cloud between them. Snow fell thicker, wrapping the town in a hush of holy anticipation. The kind of hush that precedes miracles. Henry stood still, heart pounding with reverence and longing. And he knew, with a certainty no pride could erase, God was writing something new. The day after Christmas carried a quieter kind of magic. The town was slower, softer, wrapped in the peaceful afterglow of full bellies and opened gifts. Snow still blanketed the streets, but footsteps had carved gentle paths from house to house. Inside the bakery, Melanie wiped down the counter, humming a carol under her breath. She loved this day, the day when everything calmed down and gratitude lingered heavier than noise. The bell above the door chimed intermittently as regulars came in for coffee and leftover pie. Outside, the world looked gentle. Henry walked slowly through town, hands gloved, collar up against the cold. He wasn't sure where he was going, only that something pulled him forward. People greeted him with tentative nods that felt a little less guarded than before. "Morning," someone said. "Merry Christmas," again. He smiled, a small, grateful smile that didn't try to be more than it was. He no longer needed to prove anything with his presence. He just needed to show up. As he turned the corner near the church, his gaze landed on a building he'd barely noticed in years past. The community center stood taller now, freshly painted, windows glowing with warmth even in the late afternoon light. A new wing extended from the original structure, decorated with simple Christmas garlands. Kids' laughter echoed faintly from within, followed by the clatter of games and chairs. A hand-painted sign above the door read, "Hope House, Community Outreach and Youth Center." Henry stopped dead in his tracks. Something about it tugged at his soul. He stepped closer, boots crunching softly in the snow. Through the large front window, he could see kids playing board games, coloring at tables, sipping cocoa from mismatched mugs. A teenage boy helped a younger one with homework, pointing at a math worksheet with surprising patience. Shelves lined the walls, books, donated toys, winter gear. An older woman pinned a flyer to a bulletin board labeled, "Jobs and Resources." It wasn't fancy, but it felt holy. The door opened suddenly, letting out a rush of laughter and warmth. "Come on in or you'll freeze out there," a voice called. Henry blinked, startled, as the woman at the door smiled at him. "We're open all day. You volunteering or just visiting?" He hesitated. "Honestly, I don't know yet." She chuckled softly. "Well, that's how a lot of good stories start." He stepped inside. The air smelled like hot chocolate, old books, and fresh paint. Children wove between tables, some playing, some reading, some simply soaking in the warmth. A little girl sat near the window, hugging a teddy bear like it was the best gift she'd ever received. A boy in one of the donated coats from the drive stacked canned goods in a pantry area. Every corner of the space whispered one truth. Someone had loved this place into existence. Henry's chest tightened. He knew exactly who. "First time here?" a familiar voice asked. He turned and saw Pastor Graham standing near the doorway of the new wing, hands in his pockets, eyes kind. "Yeah," Henry replied, swallowing. "Didn't realize it had grown this much." The pastor nodded. "God has a way of multiplying what's placed in his hands." He tilted his head toward the far wall. "Come, there's something you should see." Henry followed, heart pounding with an unnamed dread and awe. He had no idea what waited for him. They walked down a short hallway lined with children's drawings, snowmen, Christmas trees, crosses, clumsy hearts. At the end of the hall, a plaque hung on the wall, framed simply but reverently. Henry read the engraved words, breath hitching mid-inhale, "In honor of the broken stories God rebuilds, dedicated to the girl who refused to stay shattered." Beneath that, smaller, "This wing stands because of one heartbreak God refused to waste." His heart clenched like a fist. He stepped closer, hands trembling slightly as he reached out to touch the plaque. The metal was cold under his fingertips, but the words burned hot in his chest. "This is about her," he whispered. Pastor Graham nodded. This whole outreach was Melanie's dream. Started small, kids' cocoa nights, tutoring, donated coats. He smiled faintly. Then one day she said, "If God could rebuild me, he can rebuild this town." Henry's eyes filled, vision blurring. "And you let her?" he asked, voice cracking. The pastor chuckled. "Son, we just tried to keep up. Why didn't anyone tell me?" Henry whispered, struggling to steady his breath. "We figured it wasn't our story to use against you," the pastor replied gently. "Your shame isn't the point of this place, God's goodness is." Henry pressed his lips together, fighting the urge to collapse into a chair. "You need to understand something, Henry," Pastor Graham added. "She didn't build this as a monument to her pain or your sin. She built it as a monument to God's healing." The words shattered him more than any accusation ever could. A soft sound of footsteps echoed behind them. Henry turned, and there she was. Melanie stood in the hallway, a folder tucked under her arm, her eyes widening slightly when she saw him. She hadn't expected him here. He hadn't expected to be caught. But maybe they both needed this moment. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi," he echoed, voice barely more than a breath. "What do you think?" she asked, nodding toward the center around them. He looked around slowly, eyes lingering on each room, each child. "It's incredible," he said, the word too small. "This place feels like hope with walls." Her lips curved in a gentle, humble smile. "Funny, that's exactly what I asked God for." She walked closer, stopping next to him in front of the plaque. He watched her, unable to hide how much this moment moved him. "You did this without me," he said, voice breaking. "That's not really how I see it," she replied softly. He blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" She took a breath, eyes glistening. "God used what you broke to push me toward what he wanted to build. That doesn't excuse what you did, but it also doesn't waste it." Tears spilled down Henry's cheeks before he could stop them. "I don't deserve to have my name anywhere near this place," he whispered. Melanie shook her head. "Your name isn't on the wall, Henry." He frowned slightly. "Then why do I feel like it is?" "Because you know," she answered gently, "that this is what God grew from ashes you scattered." She turned to him, eyes soft but steady. "And you're standing here not as the villain but as a witness." He swallowed hard, voice barely holding. "I thought coming back would be about trying to fix what I ruined. But standing here, I see. You're not ruined." He laughed, a broken, incredulous sound. "You're stronger, brighter, so much more than anything I ever deserved." Melanie's gaze shimmered. "Not because of you, Henry. Because of God." "And that's exactly why," he said. "It hurts in the best possible way." Kids' voices echoed from down the hall calling her name. "Miss Melanie, are we starting movie night?" She smiled, wiping at one eye with the back of her glove. "Coming." Then she turned back to Henry. "You're welcome to stay, you know. We're making popcorn. Watching one of those old Christmas movies where everything looks too perfect to be real." He chuckled softly. "Never liked those much." "Maybe tonight you will," she said. "Sometimes the heart needs to see what it's learning to believe." He hesitated, feeling the weight of her invitation. Not romantic, not sentimental, but deeply human. An open door into the world God had built in his absence. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll stay." As they walked back toward the main room, kids rushed past them in a flurry of blankets and giggles. One little girl slipped her hand into Melanie's left hand. Another reached up and grabbed Henry's right. He looked down, stunned, as small fingers wrapped trustingly around his. They entered the main room side by side, children settling onto blankets on the floor as the movie began. Twinkling lights framed the screen, cocoa steamed in styrofoam cups, and outside, snow fell steady and calm. Henry glanced at Melanie in the glow of the projector, her features soft, peaceful, redeemed. He realized this night wasn't about him getting her back. It was about him seeing, with his own eyes, what God had done without him, and what God was still doing. Hope House hummed with holy warmth. And in that warmth, Henry whispered silently, If I get to be even a small part of this story now, Lord, I won't waste it. Movie night at Hope House stretched late into the evening, the kind of cozy warmth that made time feel slower, softer. Children dozed off on blankets, cocoa cups empty, the glow of the projector flickering across sleeping faces. Melanie gently covered each child with a donated quilt, her movements tender and practiced. Henry watched her from the doorway, heart full, breath uneven. He had never seen a woman so strong, so gentle, so clearly shaped by God. When she finally looked up, their eyes met across the dim room. Something in that glance whispered, "Not yet, but soon." Snow had begun to fall in thick, dreamy flakes as the last volunteers trickled out. Pastor Graham wished them good night and locked the front door, leaving the building hushed and holy. When Melanie turned, Henry was already pulling on his coat, ready to walk her home. She hesitated for a moment, old caution tugging at her, then nodded. "Let's go." They stepped out into the winter night, breath rising in soft plumes. The world around them glowed like a Christmas postcard. The walk was quiet at first, the only sound the soft crunch of snow beneath their boots. Christmas lights twinkled from porches, wreaths hung on every door, and the scent of pine drifted faintly through the air. Melanie tucked her gloves into her pockets, her cheeks flushed from the cold. Henry kept a careful distance, respectful, patient, but every so often, his gaze flicked toward her, as if memorizing the gentleness of her tonight. She felt it, and for once, she didn't pull away. At the corner of Maple and Birch, she paused, her favorite view of the town. The square shimmered with golden lights, the nativity scene glowing softly in the center. "It looks different this year," she murmured. Henry stood beside her, careful not to stand too close. "Or maybe," he said quietly, "we're the ones who look different." His voice carried no expectation, only truth. And truth, she realized, was the gentlest thing he'd ever offered her. They continued walking until they reached her porch, where evergreen garlands hung from the railing. Warm light spilled from her living room window, casting a welcoming glow across the snow. Melanie turned to him, exhaling slowly. "Henry, tonight meant a lot." He swallowed hard. "To me too," but he didn't step closer. Not yet. She studied his face, this new version of him softened and rebuilt. He wasn't hiding behind pride. He wasn't asking for a place in her heart. He was simply present, the kind of presence she had prayed for years ago, but not from him. And yet, here he was. God had a strange way of rewriting stories. "Can I ask you something?" he said, breath trembling in the cold. She nodded. "When you built Hope House, and was any part of it because of what I did to you?" Melanie inhaled sharply, surprised by the question. Then she shook her head, slow and sure. "No, Henry. I built it because of what God did for me." Her answer broke something inside him, in the best possible way. Tears gathered in his eyes, shimmering like frost under the Christmas lights. "Mel, I don't deserve to stand on this porch." "Maybe not," she said softly. "But grace isn't about deserving." He blinked hard, breath catching. "I wish I could take back every moment I made you feel small." "You can't," she whispered. "But you can live differently now." And he knew she was right. A gust of wind sent snowflakes dancing around them, swirling like tiny blessings. Henry stepped back as if preparing to leave. "I don't want to hurt you ever again," he murmured. "You're not hurting me," she replied. He looked up sharply, searching her face. "Then what am I doing?" Melanie exhaled, voice steady. "You're healing." Henry closed his eyes for a moment, letting her words settle deep. When he opened them, vulnerability shone there, unhidden, unashamed. "Mel, if God ever allowed me a second chance, not with you, but as a man, I would honor it with everything I am." Her heartbeat quickened, surprised by the sincerity, the reverence. She stepped closer, snow crunching beneath her boots. "I see that," she whispered. "And I see him in you." He let out a shaky, disbelieving laugh, blinking away tears. "No one's ever said that to me. Maybe no one ever looked closely enough," she replied. Silence stretched between them, warm despite the cold. Henry's hands trembled slightly at his sides, as if holding back the urge to reach for her. Melanie felt a tug in her chest, a pull she hadn't felt in years, not longing, recognition. She reached out first, just lightly, her gloved hand resting against his arm. Henry froze, breath halting as if afraid to break the moment with movement. Melanie. Her name on his lips felt like a prayer. "You came back different," she whispered. He swallowed. "I came back honest." The honesty undid her. Slowly, gently, she removed her glove. Her bare hand brushed his cheek, warm skin meeting cold night. He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch like it was the first softness he'd known in years. "You're not who you were," she said, "and I'm not who I was. And maybe," he whispered, "that's why we're standing here now." Her breath trembled. "Maybe." He opened his eyes, clear, humbled, changed. "Melanie, may I?" She stepped closer before he could finish. Their breath mingled in the frozen air, warm and fragile. Then, without fear, without hesitation, she whispered, "Yes." It was all he needed. All he'd been terrified to hope for. Henry cupped her face with trembling hands, pulling her toward him with reverence, not desperation. Melanie rose onto her toes as their lips met in a kiss that felt like a homecoming neither of them expected. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't gentle. It was intense, full of years of silence breaking, pride shattering, grace flooding in. Snow fell thickly around them, glowing under the porch light, as if heaven itself leaned close to witness. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, foreheads touching, neither spoke for several seconds. Words felt too small for the moment. Henry brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, his thumb lingering as he whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for rewriting what I ruined." Melanie's eyes filled, but not with pain, with awe, because this wasn't a story of a man returning. It was a story of God restoring. She leaned into him again, resting her head against his chest. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close, anchoring her against the cold and the world. For the first time, she didn't fear being broken again. He held her with tenderness born not from desire but transformation. "I don't know what tomorrow looks like," she whispered. "You don't have to," he replied softly. "Let's just honor what God is doing today." They stood there on her snowy porch, two people rebuilt by grace, wrapped in the glow of Christmas lights, starting a new chapter neither expected. The town slept quietly around them, unaware that a miracle had unfolded in the cold. Melanie lifted her eyes to his. "Henry, welcome home." He kissed her again, slow, reverent, grateful. A kiss that sealed not a promise but a surrender. A surrender to God's timing, God's healing, God's rewriting. And as the night settled around them like a blessing, a whisper echoed softly through the snow. Some stories break, so God can rebuild them better. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more tales of faith, redemption, and second chances. Your next miracle-filled story awaits.